Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this beautiful Friday right here in Brisbane. Hey, did you get a chance to watch that solar eclipse yesterday? Did you mark your timings? Well, of course, here it was partial, but in Exmouth, did you see that whole town was covered with that, the black cloud? And it's amazing feeling, as they've all mentioned there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now, as we prepare for the for the weekend, let's take a look at the top news today.
Hello, I'm Herlyn Kaur with the headlines on ABC News. The Reserve Bank set for one of the biggest shake-ups in its history. The board will be split in two, hold fewer meetings, listen to more experts and could even farewell its current governor. Demands for integrity reforms ramp up in Victoria in the wake of the scathing IBAC report detailing unethical conduct and grey corruption. Australians left to languish on waiting lists, in some cases longer than 6 years, to see crucial specialists like brain surgeons and immunologists. In an Australian first, ACT residents seeking an abortion can now access one from a clinic for free with or without a Medicare card. A commercial pilot and her teenage son escape unharmed after their light plane ditched into the ocean in Perth South. Tens of thousands of people in Exmouth marvel at the total solar eclipse. The tourist town plunged into darkness for about a minute in an event that delivered vital knowledge for scientists. And round 8 of the NRL has begun with a stunning upset as the South Sydney Rabbitohs scored at the death to beat reigning premiers the Penrith Panthers 20 points to 18. Those are the headlines from ABC News. You can stay up to date on our website or catch up anytime on ABC iView.
And thank you very much for this news update. Well, right now, let's take a close look at that report on RBA and the total shake-up.
The nation's top banker with a rare concession.
The current oversight arrangements of me as the Governor for managing the bank fall short of contemporary standards.
The Reserve Bank's response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the inflation crisis since coming under significant scrutiny.
This review that I'm releasing today is not about taking shots at anyone.
The RBA's decision-making powers will be split across two boards, one focused on governance, the other on monetary policy.
The type of people that you want to help the Governor come to a concluded view on interest rates might not be exactly the same kind of people that you want to run the bank.
The Monetary Policy Board will be made up of the RBA Governor, their Deputy, the Treasury Secretary and 6 others from outside the bank, aimed at ensuring more diverse economic views around the table. The current 11 meetings a year will be wound back to 8, allowing more time for the impact of their decisions to filter through the economy. After each meeting, the breakdown of how members voted without names attached will be published, and the Governor will front the media to explain the board's call.
We can communicate too little, but you can also communicate too much.
The current Communicator-in-Chief's term expires in September.
If the government would like me to stay, then I'm happy to stay.
That appointment would be considered closer to the middle of the year.
Jim Chalmers is prepared to make some appointments now, and they go to the heart of what the review is calling for. One of 2 new board members is Ian Ross, a former president of the Fair Work Commission and former assistant secretary of the ACTU, who the Treasurer argues is well placed to reflect the interests of workers. Other changes will need to go through Parliament, including scrapping the government's power to veto RBA decisions, which has never been used.
Our goal here is to make this as bipartisan as possible.
Despite the criticism of his organisation, a simple pitch.
We don't always get it right, but we always try to get it right.
Admirable, if not always understood. Matthew Doran, ABC News, Canberra.
This review is clear. The Reserve Bank's done a good job over the decades, but dropped the ball coming out of COVID lockdowns. It misjudged the inflation shock, suggested without enough caveats that rates wouldn't rise until 2024, and was then too slow to pivot as prices took off. Philip Lowe admits mistakes were made, but he has a problem accepting what the review identifies as the main cause, a lack of expertise and robust debate around his board table. The review notes in a damning revelation, some current and former board members see their role as simply being a pub test. The bottom line, the Governor faces little pushback. Now, Philip Lowe disagrees strongly, and this is a fundamental difference of opinion. He accepts the recommendations and has cooperated with what must have been an uncomfortable process. But Philip Lowe downplays the reforms as mere improvements at the margin. The Treasurer will ultimately decide whether Dr Lowe really gets what the problem is and whether he's best placed to lead the reshaping of the Reserve Bank into a second term.
And that affects so many people and the livelihood of so many people. And, what a great impact those decisions have. So there's a lot to be said about the decision that's been made there, their responsibility that lies with the board and with the chairperson there as well. Wishing them all the best. Well, let's take a look at that report from that light plane crash.
The small Piper plane crashed into the water just off Leighton Beach off WA's coast at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon in front of a crowd of shocked onlookers, many of whom who were down here at the beach after work and certainly weren't expecting to see a plane suddenly appearing right in front of them. The pilot is actually a commercial pilot who was flying with her son, and says as she was coming down the coast, the engine just stopped and she didn't have long to think about what to do next.
I was only at 1,500 feet and I didn't have much time to react, so I just called a mayday to the tower and then just turned around and landed on the water and tried to get as close to the beach as I could without hitting anybody.
Bystanders that we caught up with told us about their disbelief, basically, at seeing this plane suddenly appear in front of them and the almighty bang that it made when it hit the water. The pilot landed the plane expertly from looking at the vision that we've seen, and it's remarkable, really, and to the shock of all the bystanders, that both she and her son were able to walk out of the plane, swim back to shore relatively uninjured.
From what I understand, the pilot thought there might have been a problem with the fuel and the engine stopped working, so they had to put it down.
Now, the big question is what to do with the plane and, of course, what happened. The investigation will get underway very soon into exactly what went wrong, why the engine stopped, and how this plane ended up in the water just off the coast of Leighton Beach.
Well, at least they are safe, and I think she did the right thing under the circumstances when the engine fails for whatever reason. And the action that she took was that come as close to the beach as you can without hitting anyone. And I think she did that in a marvelous way. Well done. At least, both of them are safe. Well, going to ICT, where there have been lots of controversy in and around the abortion laws, but now ICT begins free abortion service without Medicare.
It's a service that up until now hasn't come cheaply.
To come in for a medical procedure, it would have been approximately $500 out of pocket, and for a surgical it would have been upward of $600. That's with Medicare. Without Medicare it was more expensive.
Now medical abortions up to 9 weeks gestation and surgical abortions up to 16 weeks are completely free at this Canberra clinic, with reversible long-acting contraceptives also offered to clients at no cost. It's the first stage of a $4.6 million 4-year commitment by the ACT government.
We have safe and legal abortion services across Australia now, but the financial barrier has been a significant one.
Telehealth services and specially trained GPs are also expected to join the scheme in the coming months.
This is about giving people who can become pregnant an opportunity to make their own choice about their reproductive health.
Advocacy body Women's Health Matters sees further barriers. They surveyed 90 people who had sought abortions in the Canberra region, and while more than half were satisfied with their experience, others struggled to access appointments or to find pharmacists willing to dispense the necessary medication. One person told researchers,
"I feel like I was rushed. I was also coerced by my partner at the time, and I don't feel there was enough done to find out about my circumstance or any therapy or aftercare afterwards."
When we talk about the need for access to improve and when we talk about the need for reproductive and sexual health strategies, we need to ensure that thinking about gender-based violence and looking at domestic and sexual violence is at the centre of everything that we're doing.
Challenges that will take more than free access to address. Harry Frost, ABC News, Canberra.
So there you are, up to date on Australian Indian Radio, and it is a service which is happening, but right now it will now be free of cost. Well, now let's go to Victoria, where the Victorian government is going to reimburse people affected by Porter Davis collapse.
Until this morning, this empty block was all Richard Williams had left of his dream of building a home.
Does a bee say woof, 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 woof? No?
Now he says he'll sleep well for the first time in weeks after hearing he'd be getting back his $38,000 deposit.
This just means so much to not just my family, but all families who have been a victim of this.
The government says it will repay around 560 families who hadn't started construction and lost their 5% deposit after Porter Davis failed to lodge their compulsory insurance policy. The average payout will be around $25,000 per client, at an estimated total cost of $15 million.
People who paid a deposit, paid for their insurance but didn't get any insurance because of Porter Davis not taking out the policy for them, we're not going to leave them in the lurch.
The financial assistance will not cover customers in other states. Documents filed by the liquidators with corporate regulator ASIC appear to show that various Porter Davis companies owed tens of millions of dollars to hundreds of creditors. This steel framing company says it's owed $896,000 and has been forced to reduce hours for staff.
If I didn't get that money back, I don't know how business is going. Serious?
The Premier says the government is still working with the liquidator on how to deal with others affected by the builder's collapse, and says there'll be a wider investigation into the impact.
We're going to make sure there are consequences for people who I think, on any reasonable measure, have done the wrong thing here.
What today's announcement doesn't cover are the systemic challenges facing the government's ability to manage and help protect home buyers in residential construction.
Having lost faith in the building industry, Richard Williams' future home plans appear a distant prospect. Sasha Payne.
Yes, and distant it may be, but have a look at this report where the builder of a house that collapsed has been reported over safety breaches.
A terrifying ordeal in a home that was less than a year old. The cause of this collapse at Condell Park 2 weeks ago is still being investigated. But only a day earlier, the state's building commissioner had inspected an apartment construction site in Concord in Sydney's inner west.
There were no safety handrails, there were falls, there were people sitting under unprotected edges. The site was just a safety nightmare.
It's being built by Hemisphere Constructions, the same company behind this house. Safe Work New South Wales inspectors went to the Concord site and issued prohibition and improvement notices last week. It will also be audited for building quality by Fair Trading. In a statement, Hemisphere Constructions said following the Commissioner's visit, they sent all tradespeople home and rectified the site with all railings and within Safe Work New South Wales standards. Regarding the Condell Park home, the company is willing to rectify the damage and will work with the relevant authorities to undertake an investigation.
I am seeing more Class 1 or typical house builders starting to look at multi-unit construction as their future. That demands a very different set of skill sets.
We need better designers, we need better developers, and we certainly need more builders and better builders so that the consumer is protected.
The building company says it's offering support to the owners and tenants of the home which collapsed, including help with temporary accommodation. Kathleen Calderwood, ABC News, Sydney.
Well, I mean, these kind of things were unheard of before because the Australian building standard was very, very high. So it just goes to so in the design, the certification, passing through all various stages. They have certifiers, but these days there are private certifiers as well. So I don't know where the fault lies, but it's something that really needs to be looked at. Well, the going out report for today is that solar eclipse that we were talking about.
A minute in darkness, a memory forever.
Look at the sky. Oh my God.
This is insane. First a crescent, then totality. As the moon passed between the Earth and the Sun, effectively turning off the lights to Exmouth. This was the best place in the world to witness the extraordinary astronomical event, and with perfect weather, tens of thousands of fans weren't disappointed.
Good job.
No matter where you came from, being anywhere near Exmouth guaranteed excitement.
Hiking!
and in a flash, over. Words not necessary.
Yeah, it was a big cheer. It was just so awesome and dramatic and amazing. And there's like all these thousands of people here, and like they were so excited to be looking at the solar system, right? And so you can see the planets, you can see Mercury, you can see Venus, and you can see Jupiter, and you can see all the planets there.
A boon for space enthusiasts, a bonanza for scientists.
It's much more than a pretty sight. There's a lot of scientific value. 101 years ago in WA, there was a total solar eclipse, and the measurements from there proved Einstein's general theory of relativity.
After years of planning this, usually Sleepy Town will go from solar totality and back to normality, and tens of thousands of eclipse chasers will turn their minds to the next one, which will take place over North America next year. But it'll be back in Australia again in 5 years' time. Jessica Hayes, ABC News, Exmouth.
And I hope that bakery there would have done very good business. Yes, and what a wonderful report. You know, this is a event which doesn't take place everywhere, and how they pinpointed where exactly will be the totality to be viewed, and Exmouth was the place, and all those people who were there were not discouraged. They all had a wonderful view, and they are enthusiastic, so you could see the excitement in the faces. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now, let's take a look at what's going to be happening this weekend. And don't forget that at 10 a.m. we have a very special interview coming up from the Basava Samiti group talking about the Basava Jayanti, which will be happening this weekend. So we will have that today and again tomorrow. So right now, it's time to go to all our functions and events. There are, ladies and gentlemen, up to date on Australian Indian Radio, and I hope that you have a good plan for this weekend with so much happening right here in Brisbane. We'll keep you up to date, but don't forget that at 10 a.m. We have a very special interview coming up about Vasava Samiti and the Vasava Jayanti, which will be held this Saturday. Well, right now it's time to say goodbye from this segment. Until the next segment, we will see you then.